name's Nikki. I'm originally from Australia. I moved to Singapore when I was about 15 years ago now, so quite a long time. Before that in Australia, Australia is made up of mainly SMEs. So I was very lucky, and I lived in Brisbane, so not the big city like Sydney or Melbourne. And I was lucky to have a couple of companies that I worked with that had sort of national coverage. So that was good. And I had some very good mentors that I worked with before I left, which sort of set me up for success. And then I moved to Singapore, and I took on more of a multinational role in the logistics industry. So that was my first entry into Singapore, and I stayed with them for about 5 years. And it was a little bit different. So they took on a different approach. It was sort of a mid-tier player, but they really wanted to get their name out there. And this is before really digital was there, especially in B2B marketing. So we did a lot of sports sponsorship, which that was quite fun. Like F1, F2, sailing, and all different types of things that were there, football. And then I decided a little bit later in my career than most, but I decided I would convert over to the agency side. I was sort of lured over, and I was a brand strategist for Interbrand. And I will say, as much as I much prefer being on the internal side, it was a very good opportunity. So you just can't learn the sort of level of brand strategy on an internal corporate position, whereas on the agency with multiple different companies and industries that you're working for, it's quite a challenge and you learn pretty quickly. So it was a great probably 3-4 years on the agency side, but then my true calling was to come back to an internal position, and I started with Kuehne + Nagel, which is another logistics player. But when I started with them, they literally did not really have a very strong foundation in marketing, and definitely not in Asia. So my job was to come in and sort of educate them what marketing could be. And then after that, I got headhunted for a very unique role, and it was with Google. I didn't know this role ever existed. It was basically head of communications and engagement for the food program. So it was an internal marketing role, and it was for the Asia Pacific region. And I kid you not when I tell you my days were filled with tasting wonderful food, going around and seeing that the kitchens were filled with lovely spa water, and that was merchandising was done correctly. That actually was my job. But about a year and a bit in, I got headhunted again for my current role at UPS. And as much as I had a lot of fun at Google, I definitely did, it took me away from my pure digital side, which really is my wheelhouse. UPS is a different company, again, a different culture again to what I've had. They're extremely data driven, very good at operations. Even in the last 18 months, I've learned a lot, but I love it because as a marketer, there's no better time than now with all the data that's coming about. People still struggle, and we struggle a lot on the B2B side, but I would say UPS is ahead of the curve. So I think it's not news to anybody. The e-commerce, the digital evolution was already fast running, and it just went into high speed with what happened this year. And we've kicked it into overdrive. I think one of the key things we see really is that the customer experience is so critical to that. So the supply of goods have to keep moving. People want to still shop, they need food, they need different things. And one of the things, so we quite often do a research paper once a year or every couple of years, and even last year, so it was the pulse of the online shopper. And reviewers are very keen to look at the return policy. It's one of the key things. And we know that basically 42% of online shoppers in Asia Pacific made sure that they read about what would happen about return policies before they made a purchase, which just reinforces how important it is, especially in Asia, because it's not something that is quite well engineered at the moment, the reverse logistics. It's a lot more difficult as well because of cross borders, and people forget that there's customs and brokerage involved in that. And that's where a lot of the, I guess, newbies that are coming onto the e-commerce platforms get a little bit stuck. And I guess that is definitely one of the areas that my small business team is digging into, which is what we call the Digital Access Program, which is really looking to sync and integrate in with those e-commerce platforms and make sure that we make it as easy as we can for the merchandisers that want to sell their goods on, places like Lazada or eBay or anything like that. So that trend is not going to stop, and we're going to continue to see that rise. I think there's a little bit still of where goods are going. People, speculate that, they'll be out of China, whenever it happens. I think people underestimate how difficult it is to build a supply chain, and that they are factories. I mean, you look at Foxconn, which does all of your mobile phones for iPhone, for Samsung, for everything like that. It's a town. There is hundreds of thousands of people that work there. You cannot just pick that up and move that to Thailand or Vietnam overnight. It does not happen. However, what it has done with supply chains, and that's why having a partner and working with someone like UPS is critical, is that there are parts along the supply chain that you can move, and there is parts that you can re-engineer. And during this whole epidemic, we had to look at how we could help our customers get things in and out, where the flights would go, when they would be delayed, help them with clearing of customs, all the different rules and regulations that came in with PPE, so all your hazards and stuff like that. So those things are not going to change. E-commerce is continue to drive up. The other things that I would call out from the marketing side that I'm seeing of a trend is marketing influencing. So in China, that's quite big. And I must admit, to begin with, my China team push the China influence marketing. And it's quite different to the traditional sort of B2B, what I would say would be word of mouth, someone that is quite well known in the industry, that you would say, okay, well, that's not how I want to influence marketing. It's someone that is nothing there, doesn't even talk about it, and you have to scroll for ages to sort of understand the link. And I was like, I don't think we should do this. I don't see it. I don't connect it. I can't sell this to corporate. But they did. They took their time. They explained it to me so I could actually explain it to corporate, because that's my job. And they did okay. The results were okay. And so that's one of the key things that we have to watch as marketers. There's all these new things coming up, and we may not be the owners of the content. And we have to be careful how we approach that and how we bring that in and leverage that, as well as some that you can be more direct, like in China, where they are taking up and they do actually have hold and really help that word of mouth. A couple of key skills for me is definitely one, communications. You want to be in marketing and digital or PR, you need to be a good communicator. So that means you need to know how to articulate yourself. You need to be able to speak well. You need to be able to write a story. You need to have a point of view, an opinion. It doesn't mean you need to push that, but you need to have a point of view. And another one is like you said, data is very good. Now, not everybody is a data scientist, not everyone can crunch numbers or work on Excel. Get the basics there, understand it enough. If it's not your forte, just be aware you need to be able to tell the story, and you need to know what data that you need, and someone can help you. Okay, so that is at least the basic there that I would say. But the other key thing for me, and what's always kept me going, is that you need to think like the customer. So again, we come back to CX, right? So where does the customer want to be? What is relevant for them? If you're looking for a career like mine, where you are ahead of a region or ahead of global, then you need strong stakeholder management skills. You need to learn how to read a room and culture. You need to understand where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are, and surround yourselves with people that complement you and fill in those gaps. And one of the key things is, don't be afraid to ask questions, keep learning. I ask my agencies, my team, if I don't understand something, I'm like, can you explain that? What's that mean? Because especially in digital and marketing, things are evolving, and people coming up, they're the experts, right? And as you get more senior, you become less of an expert, more generalist, strategic, but you don't have the nitty-gritty detail. But you need to be able to read between the lines. So that's where coming as a good communicator, understanding, if you can get that right and read a room, everything else will fall into place.